All right, afternoon, everyone. I'm Corporal Gildemeister with the Hays Police Department. I've been there for just about 8 years now, and I was just asked to come here tonight and help kind of answer any questions. I understand you guys watched an informational video about fentanyl earlier in the evening. I apologize, couldn't be here for that. I was hoping I could piggyback off of that, really. But I probably don't really have too much more information as far as the breakdown from the video would go. I don't really have anything else to add on to that as far as a presentation. But by all means, if you guys have any questions related to that video, related to any type of drug overdoses, using NARCAN, the effects of it, anything along those lines, by all means, I'm open to questions, to feedback. And then if you guys just have anything else you're dying to ask, usually when officers are in a room full of people, usually one or two questions come up where, hey, I've always wondered, but how does this work, or why do you do that? And we can, yeah, no, not a problem, and we can always do that as well. I have no issues kind of getting a little bit off topic here. I got some time here with you guys. My shift just started, and I work 12-hour shifts, so I'll stay here probably as late as you guys want me to be. But as far as starting with the fentanyl video, did you guys have any questions or anything that you want me to try to clarify? I'm no doctor by any means, but I do have a little bit of firsthand experience with that. Is there anything that you guys want to know, clarification questions, as far as how that works or why it happens the way it does? Must have been a good video.
Our issue is getting access to it. She's ordered in the fall. It's still hasn't
We're still waiting on the NARCAN.
And we just realized the importance of having it available.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, that is something that one of the, I guess the number one thing I would suggest for you guys protecting yourselves and your congregation with that is just having access to it. Like I said, we recently got it not even that long ago. I've known some departments that have had it for years, but fortunately Hays has been pretty sheltered in a lot of ways from some of the opioid epidemic that we've seen in other departments, other states, other major cities. So it's kind of taken a little bit longer for it to come here, but it is here. We are seeing it. Not quite as frequently as maybe some other drugs, but it is something to certainly keep in mind and be aware of, because it is extremely dangerous. If you guys do come across something that you do suspect, even if you don't believe it's fentanyl or carfentanil or any variation of that, which is the opioid variety. But if you guys come across any type of drugs that you believe may be suspicious or something that you believe may be used for it, our best suggestion or advice is always just to simply call us. We have the equipment, the training, the knowledge to come over, and that's a pretty regular call that we do get on a pretty often basis, where we come by and we realize, there's some discarded needles or baggies or something along those lines that we can help take care of that for you. If you guys were to ever handle anything that you suspect are drugs, I always suggest making sure you use personal protective equipment, okay? At the very, very least, gloves. That's the best way you can help protect yourself. If you do believe it's something that may be more potent or dangerous, any type of like that white powder substance, then if you have a face mask as well, that's something else you can do to try to help protect you against ingesting any of that stuff accidentally. And that's kind of one of the bigger concerns for I guess the safety aspect of it is just making sure that you are using proper personal protective equipment. And if you're in a situation where you find something across like that and you believe that, you know what, it's not hurting anyone, it's safe where it's at, we can just leave it be, give us a call, we'll come by, take care of it for you, and handle it from there. But that's certainly, from the safety aspect, that's what we want to get across as well. Simply because technology has enabled much more concentrated, much more dangerous forms of drugs that have been around for years, but they're getting stronger and stronger, more and more dangerous. And fentanyl being one of those. And there's even variations of fentanyl that are more potent than that. So I'm not trying to be a scare tactic up here by any means, but I mean, it is a serious subject, and it's something that we want to make sure everybody's staying safe and taking care of themselves and others. So.
What is the weakest drugs we deal with?
The weakest drugs? Oh, sorry, biggest drugs. I would say most of the time probably be marijuana. That's just the most common that we come across. I mean, with it being, it's being legalized over in Oklahoma, and you're able to access it in Colorado, medicinal in Oklahoma, and then some of the surrounding states are also medicinal. That's something that we do see come in. It's usually something that we come across a little bit more frequently. Is I'd say marijuana more than anything else. But then we also have high schoolers and middle schoolers who can also abuse prescription medication, which is something that probably isn't brought up or talked about quite enough. But I mean, if they have a relative, father, mother, grandparent, someone who has prescription pills that they have access to, sometimes they're able to take those and use and abuse those as well. And those are sometimes much more difficult to detect, because if they simply take that, there isn't the pipes, the bags, the other evidence that you may see associated with other more dangerous drugs than simply the pills. But no, that's a great question. Anything else? Anybody else? I know there's always a couple more.
We did learn from the video that if you're not sure, to go ahead and administer NARCAN.
Correct. Yes. Yep. If someone is not breathing and you have any indication or suspect that it may be drug related in any way, and there's any type of drug evidence nearby, like I said, usually it could be spoons, needles, baggies, pipes, those kind of things. It could be white powder nearby, those kind of things. It will never hurt them to administer Narcan if it's not needed. So we always want to err on the side of safety and caution. And once we have that, we'd rather give it to them. And if they don't need it, it'll simply go in their system, and it'll be out, usually about, depending on the dosage, but maybe a half hour, an hour or so. And no harm, no foul if they didn't need it. But that could be one of those things where that's what's going on, is they stop breathing. And that's the way I'm like I said, I probably can't explain it any better than the video demonstrated. But the way that it works is to block those areas which actually allows you to bring in oxygen and breathe. And that's kind of something that people need to kind of realize, that it can happen very quickly and very suddenly. And if it is a lethal amount like that, where it actually does stop them breathing, they're not going to be able to help themselves. They need somebody else to help them. And that's not something where they're going to come back from that alone. The other thing, I don't know if the video, I wish I could have piggybacked, but I don't know if the video mentioned this or not, but something to keep in mind when it comes to fentanyl as well, depending on the amount of drugs ingested, consumed, accidentally exposed, depending on how much is in their system, you may use NARCAN, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 doses of NARCAN, depending on the situation, depending on how high it is, but that drug is still in their system. That drug is still in their body. And if it's a high enough level, once the NARCAN wears off and goes away, and it goes off of those receptors, they're allowing oxygen, allowing their breathing to come back to normal, it is possible for them to actually redose, or re-overdose, I should say. And I'm getting a little feedback. It is possible for them to actually re-overdose and actually get to a position where they could be breathing fine, being completely normal, talking, walking. Seems like they're 100% back to normal. And then the drugs in their system actually come back over the top and re-overdose. And there have been documented instances of that. I would say I've never heard of an accidental exposure that resulted in a re-overdose. Because usually if it's an accidental exposure, it's something where it got in your hands, you accidentally inhaled it. I mean, it's a pretty minor amount. It's a pretty small dosage that you could be exposed to. Typically, if we see some higher amounts, it's going to be someone who's intentionally using that drug, and that is already in their system so bad that once the NARCAN wears off, then they could re-overdose. So we always suggest they always get checked out by EMS, always go to a hospital afterwards. the unfortunate thing sometimes what we deal with is if someone is intentionally using that drug, once you bring them back, NARCAN works almost instantaneously when it works. Again, you may need to administer 2 or 3 doses, but then you'll suddenly see them kind of take a big gasp, start breathing, and then they're walking, talking normal within a matter of a couple minutes. And there have been times, unfortunately in our profession, hopefully you guys don't have to do it here, but where the person comes back and they are angry and mad and they come back combative because to us, from our point of view, or sorry, from their point of view, what we just did was we just kind of ruined their high. Again, if they're using intentionally. So something to keep in mind is it goes away and they immediately want to have that feeling again if that's what they were using. So sometimes it's not even the redose that's in their system, it's they walk away and then use again, and then the accumulated effects of that obviously can be detrimental. So we always want to suggest being seen by EMS, getting out to a hospital, getting some kind of professional medical care anytime somebody has gone through an overdose experience, whether it's intentional or accidental, just to make sure that they're getting the proper care and treatment. And that way, if something does happen and the Narcan wears off and they have adverse effects to it, that way they're already in a medical facility or medical care area where they're able to be helped immediately. But no, excellent question.
We did discuss, the question was, where is the main supply of fentanyl coming from, which we couldn't answer. And yet, where does the medical community get the fentanyl that's good to use? Okay.
So, and that's kind of a complicated question, and it's a great question. It can be, we've seen very large amounts of drugs, narcotics, mostly coming from South America, coming in through Mexico. So it's certainly possible they're being made and distributed in other areas in South America as well. But there is a very large amount of drugs that are being brought in from Mexico as to trying to bring it into the country. Likewise, there are, for very large quantities, I'd say that's probably the largest source. But if you have the skills or access or knowledge, you can really order just about anything you want on the internet these days, including except NARCAN right now. It's in high demand, but including illegal drugs, narcotics, things like that as well. There is the ability to order those things online and have those purchased, and so we will even at times come across shipments from simply like UPS or the mail or somebody that literally they're simply trying to mail the things through, and they know some of them may be caught or apprehended. And usually those mailing services do an excellent job of catching most of them, but some do still get through, and people get very, very creative in ways in how they want to hide drugs, narcotics. And again, depending on the quantity, if someone's trying to get a little bit of personal use, there's an infinite ways they can hide that in just about anything. When we're talking about trying to bring over, truckloads or plane loads full, then it gets much, much more difficult for those distributors to try to bring it into the country.
Yeah, you see on the news those great big packages all lined up.
No, exactly, and that's, simply the way it works is, it's probably a better description, but those essentially the wholesalers, right, where they're bringing in truckloads full of stuff, and then it starts getting distributed to people below them, and then they break it into sections where, they'll send, like Amazon, where we have a giant box or a giant shipment, and then they're breaking it into different sections. So you might have a semi coming into the United States that's loaded with drugs, and then it's going to be sent to other major cities and networks, and then from there you have someone that is maybe in charge of a certain section of town or area, and then they're passing it down, distributing it until it gets down to personal use levels where people are selling it hand to hand, and they're buying it on the street level. But they're trying to look for ways to bring in large quantities of drugs, that way they can bring it in that way. And then fentanyl, as potent as it is, and as much of the extreme high it gives you, The other danger we've come across and we've seen is that at times drug dealers will actually use small amounts of fentanyl and put it and mix it into the drugs they already have and they're selling, simply to give it more potency. So it's, at this stage at least, in this area of our state, for what I've seen locally, that's usually the case. We're usually not coming across 100% pure fentanyl or people using those type of things. Even the pills they make, things like that. I mean, it's probably a very small percentage of that is actual fentanyl, and everything else is fillers or agents or ways to cut it and build up bulk, just because it is so potent and it can be so lethal in such tiny, tiny amounts that they're looking for ways to cut it down and fill it. And if they're able to mix the small amounts of that into other drugs, we've come across, most commonly around here is probably methamphetamine, is they're taking little, small amounts of fentanyl and mixing it with methamphetamine in order to give it a little extra kick, have a deeper high, those kind of things. That can be extremely dangerous, because then, especially if the people who are buying it don't know about it, things like that, we've had, I'd say, more accidental overdoses on those type of things than anything, because they didn't realize the potency amount, they didn't know it was laced with it, whatever the case may be. And that's kind of the danger of it is, even though they are using drugs illegally or illicitly, there is no control, there's no quality. There's really no oversight or quality checking, things like that when drug dealers are selling those things. So you might have one batch that it's much lower in fentanyl than others, one batch that's much higher, and same can be said for many other drugs and the way they mix it, the way they use it, the purity levels of it. There can be definitely inconsistencies. If they order from one person out in a large city like Kansas City versus Wichita, they don't really know how potent that drug is, how much it's going to kick, and in what levels it's actually going to hurt people as well.
So how long do these highs usually last?
It's kind of hard to say. It depends on multiple factors. It depends on the type of drug you're using, whether it may be methamphetamine, cocaine, those type of things, versus the purity, potency of the drug, and then how much they're using as well. So, I mean, it could be a matter of, for I guess some of the harder drugs that we've been talking about, it could be a matter of a few hours, up to, we've had ones that have told me I think they made it over 12 hours or so, sometimes a little bit longer depending. So, I mean, it can vary. It depends on how their body has acclimated to that, how long they've been using, and those type of things. So almost kind of like, not to villainize sugar or anything, but almost kind of like, a sugary snack, right? It depends on the type of snack you eat, how much sugar is in there, how well your body can process it. I mean, it'll kind of vary, but your body, any substance we put into our body, whether it be food or drugs, we're looking to break that down, to process that, to work through that, and that's part of the process. As it's processing it, you're feeling the effects, you're feeling the high, and then you can come back down from it. And then some highs are much steeper and harder and more intense than others. Some are lower, more mellow, but I mean, it really depends on the drug, I guess, at that time. If you smoke a THC or marijuana vape pen, you're going to feel very different than obviously if you are injecting meth into your bloodstream, those type of things. But great question, just hard to answer.
I'm so naive. It just appears to me that fentanyl is just being given away to the users. Are they having to buy it? They don't look like they have much allowance. But, women have to prostitute themselves for the other drugs.
Mm-hmm.
What about, it seems like fentanyl is just being given away, or am I watching too many TV shows?
I would say it's safe to say any serious drug dealer or somebody that is using this, they view it in their mind like a business. So I mean, if they're able to get people addicted to their product, addicted to their drugs, and the more people they can have return customers, if you will, have them come back, then the better it is for their business. But at the end of the day, I'm not aware of anyone who sells drugs whose motivation or objective is not money. That's really what it is it's a way for them to earn money, to make money. And some cities and some areas, they can make quite a bit of money and some large amounts pretty quickly. But that's what it may be. Is I've seen that on TV shows. Personally, I've only come across people sharing with me that they offered maybe if they've been out of it for a while or hadn't bought from a dealer for a while, they may be offered a free bag, one time thing, trying to get them back and trying to get them hooked back into it. But that's, again, their goal, their objective is to have a returning customer. So, a great question. Yes, ma'am.
Is NARCAN used to counter the effects of other drugs or just strictly fentanyl?
So Narcan is used specifically to counter the effects of opiates. So it is used very, very well as well for heroin overdoses, things like that. So other drugs that are derived of opiates and opium, then yes, it will work in the same way. Fentanyl has been the biggest scare recently by all means, because it is so potent and so dangerous and deadly. And I'm not saying it couldn't happen, I've never heard of an accidental heroin overdose. You know what I mean? But certainly we do have, especially people that are exposed in first responders, people that have relatives or loved ones that may use drugs illegally. There are certainly a greater risk or chance for accidental fentanyl overdoses, which is why it's become, I guess, such an issue recently. But yeah, it does work and has worked for years for heroin as well. So any derivative of opium, and those are the two biggest ones. There's heroin, and then fentanyl, and there's carfentanil and a few other variations of that. But they're essentially just getting stronger and stronger from there, but obviously the more potent it is, the more risk for overdose and lethality in that instance.
You had mentioned the Hays Police Department now has the NARCAN in possession. Does that mean each officer, each police car? How large a scale do they have it on?
So what we've chosen to do at our department is we have it strategically set in our offices at our building, in areas that we'd be more likely for us to actually be exposed to it. So in our evidence processing table, for example, where we actually we test the drugs, things like that, where we're opening bags, we have a greater likelihood of accidentally being exposed for us. So we have those Narcans set up throughout our agency for those reasons. EMS has been carrying it for much longer than we have. They keep it in their vehicles. The tricky thing with Narcan, at least the forms we use most commonly, the nasal spray, it does have to maintain a certain temperature, and we want it to be basically climate controlled. And like during the summertime, we have all black police cars. They're sitting out sometimes. If we're off duty, they're sitting in parking lots with the sun beat down them for hours at a time. So sometimes the interior of our cars get so hot we didn't feel those would be stable, having them inside our cars. But we have access to them at our police station, then also EMS as well. Excellent question.
One of our questions before you got here was the why. Why the high is needed, and Shayna teaches at Hays High, and she brought up the degree of mental illness that's growing.
That would probably be. I'm certainly no expert in that field. I mean, that we could probably debate both sides of that probably for the rest of the night. It is certainly the $1 million question, right? I mean, if we could try to attack the root cause, the root problem, and eliminate the need or the why for drugs that need to feel high, then the entire drug industry would be essentially collapsed. But if we were able to address that correctly, I think it is one of those things where I've personally spoken with people who use it to escape, who use it to try to feel better, people who are very, I don't know, depressed or dissatisfied with their own life, and that way they're trying to, for a period of time, have that feeling. And it is one of those things where you kind of see both sides of the problem in my profession, my job, like, is absolutely illegal, and it is absolutely our job to catch those people. But I have come across people who, they feel victim to their addiction, to their drug habits, if you will, and it is. Apologies, I have a radio in my ear. It is something where we have been trying to find ways in recent years to address the more root cause or underlying cause of that. Sometimes it is mental health and illness. Sometimes it is the need for a support system, someone to actually give them a chance or help them or do that. We actually do have in the last, I'm trying to think how long it's been, several years, the Ellis County has had a drug court for the Ellis County District Court. They have a drug court, and they've actually, they post a lot of their success stories. I see them post on Facebook and share it on there. But we have had people that I've personally either arrested or experienced or dealt with on my job that they have been able to help them through that program, and have been able to be an advocate or voice for others who are also struggling in those same situations, and they've been able to contribute to society and hold jobs and actually make it through in ways that they've never been able to do before, whether through rehab or on their own. So it is one of those things where I believe across the country, nationally, we are trying to find ways to address that in a better way and try to help get people through that. Because while we certainly do have to still obey the laws and hold people accountable, there is something to be said where if they simply get arrested, get sent to jail or prison, then get released, and there's nothing else or no other support or help or programs, we've seen time and time again the chances of them becoming a repeat offender and the recidivism rate increases dramatically. So we do want to look for ways to try to help them through that. And locally, that has actually been a pretty impressive program, especially for this area and for Western Kansas. I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe we're one of the first in the area to do that. And it's kind of been a pilot program, and it's been working very well.
I think our goal, if somebody stumbled in here looking for help, is not to judge them, but to get them safe and into the resources that can help them with this supporting role of some kind.
Right. And I would encourage, we can certainly, while that's not our job per se, it's not something I specialize in or work with, we would be able to help get them in touch with resources or contacts or provide some of those opportunities for them. Keep in mind, it's kind of weird as this is to say, it's not illegal for someone to be high or under the influence unless they're operating a vehicle, they're posing danger to themselves or others in some way. Like if someone were to come in here and they were clearly under the influence, it's illegal for them to be in possession of the drug, because then we have to charge them with it, go through the process. But if they say and as an example, someone had come in here saying, I'm trying to get clean, I'm trying to turn my life around, I just flushed or got rid of or threw out all my drugs, I don't have anything else in here, and even if he's still feeling the effects of it and he came in here, like, that's certainly not our job. We wouldn't get him in trouble. He wouldn't be have no really need to fear from us in that instance. It would be something where we could help try to direct him to some better resources, things like that. So, and that would probably be my recommendation if they are not aware of the the resources we have. I mean, we have a lot of excellent like rehab facilities, or at the very least ways to get in touch or contact with people who can we can help with that. So, and you kind of mentioned, I mean, the difficulty it is for you guys to get NARCAN. I personally didn't go through the ordering process, so I don't know where we received ours from or got ours from, but I do know because of the heroin epidemic we've had, and then the increase in fentanyl and other dangerous drugs, there has been a much higher demand for fentanyl in recent years. And I believe I've even seen some states or cities that have recognized that need for it, and they're willing to give free fentanyl, 1 or 2 free doses of fentanyl to someone in need, whether it's for them, for a family member, loved one, whatever the case may be, simply because they realize it does save lives. It certainly can help with that. I'm sorry, fentanyl. Thank you for correcting me. I've been saying fentanyl too many times. I have heard, I can't say I've spoken with our local Walgreens, but I have heard from others that Walgreens has helped supply or get fentanyl to other people as well to try to help. NARCAN. I heard it. I need slides. For everyone watching this on the recording, NARCAN's the good stuff. It will save lives. Any other questions?
I have one off topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love, on Facebook, I read the Kansas, or the Ellis County Scanner.
Mm-hmm.
And I read for the time of day, the rest are made, which is 2:20 or so that's your shift.
In the morning?
Yeah.
Yes, yep. It certainly can be, yep.
Lots goes on there.
Yes.
And then what I can't get over is how quickly, like the police respond in 3 minutes or something. How do you get across town?
So we just based on our experience and our call volume and what we expect. I mean, if it's about 2:30 in the morning, most of the time that's probably going to be related to some type of bar activity. Whether people are out at the bars drinking, and so we have a very heavy police presence down there. Most of the time, once we start getting to bar closed area, most of our officers are down the south part of town, kind of patrolling through those areas. So it could be absolutely. There have been times we've gotten calls for out at a bar, and we're half a block away simply because we're already driving through that area looking for people that are trying to start fights, damage property, drink and drive. We tend to see an increase in activity for that type of thing. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And this may be something that has kind of decreased. A few years ago, sexting and online behavior
Right.
was a huge issue among our youth. Are you seeing a decline in that, or?
No. If anything, it's probably gotten worse. I believe I know there are just simply better ways to try to hide it. So that'd be something where for anyone that does have teenage age children who that may be concerned or worry to them, it's usually not the sexting is the sex texting, right? Usually those pictures, images, or any type of concerning communication is not being done simply over text, because that's one of the most obvious and easiest ways for it to be seen. It's usually, there's a myriad of social media platforms now. Every single one of them has its own messaging service. Snapchat's a very, very popular one right now. It has been for a while because it can erase images after a certain period of time, so it's harder to catch those, if you will. But we've seen it across Facebook Messenger, simple texting, Instagram, Snapchat. There's really, if someone's determined and they have access to that, there's a way for it to be done or for them to get to it. I would say that would be certainly one of the things where you want to address more the root cause of the problem or the why, and try to help prevent it from happening in the first place. Because
Younger kids?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And this is not trying to take a stance one way or the other, whether you think, cell phones are a wonderful device and they're great to have or not. I mean, it's both. It really is. It's just how it's used. It's a tool just like anything else. We do see children that are younger and younger having access to phones and to those tools. Again, can be 1,000 wonderful reasons why, but it does open the possibility of the danger for that to happen as well. So
Parents probably first line of defense.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. No, there's no question. If you have a child, I guess my biggest suggestion there would be if you have a child, whether, and it doesn't even have to be a cell phone, it could be a computer, a tablet, an iPad. I mean, we've come across all those as well, where parents don't realize that their iPad has messaging capabilities, video or picture recording capabilities. A laptop, has every single one of them now basically have a camera on them. I mean, those are things that you certainly need to be able to have an honest conversation with your child and try to help address those concerns and teach them about those things before they get the opportunity to be exposed to that.
So we were trained, and if a student comes to us and says, hey, this is going on, the adult makes sure that they don't ever say, hey, send me that and I'll report it.
Oh.
Because then you are
Correct.
dispensing that information.
You're right.
So it's important to understand that if a young person comes to you and says, here's what's going on, or shows you, how do you...
The best thing evidentiary-wise for us, the absolute best thing if we're able to, is to get the device itself that was used in either instance. So that will help us more than anything else, because just like technology can be used for horrible things as well, it can also be a wonderful thing. And in our case, it also can always leave a fingerprint. So we have officers that are trained. We have part of a high technology crime unit, and officers that are trained on how to actually dig into the digital forensics on cell phones, laptops, computers, iPads, those kind of things, and are able to help locate the person on the other end of that. So if we're able to get the original device, that is the absolute best thing we can do. If you have a student or anyone who try to hand you that device or say, here, there's something on here, one of the best things you can do for us, just to help us out, is to actually place it in airplane mode, because then it prevents any type of communication to or from. It essentially kind of shuts that down and blocks it, so someone else is not able to remotely change, access, or erase anything on that device, which is, in the case of if we're talking about a child, it's less likely, but again, a lot of these devices are connected. I have an Apple Watch, a smartwatch, I have an iPhone, and a computer. They're all made by Apple, and I love what it works for me and how it works for me, but I'm also able to use one of those devices to influence the others. I can use my laptop to lock my cell phone or erase things. I can use it vice versa. So keep that in mind as well, that a lot of times, and I personally just happen to have iPhone products. Google works the same way, Android works the same way. You're able to access those things as well. So if you're able to put it into airplane mode, that's one of the better ways we can use to protect it from that.
I suppose these kids can do more than cut and paste, which that's all I can do.
Well, they're still naive enough. They think that it goes away.
Right, and that's...
There's a digital footprint for the rest of your life.
Right. And that's, unfortunately, that's been something we've seen quite a bit, where there used to be a very, very big push, and I'm sure there still is, that anything you post on the internet is permanent. And when the internet was coming about, that's one of those things where we're trying to help educate people that were new users to it, the effects of it, how that works. Now, we've had children that have grown up their entire lives with access to the technology, and it's just, it's known, but it's not big and scary to them, because they've used their entire life. Many of them are very, very capable and adept at using it. Anyone that's in middle school or high school right now, I'm sure I could hand off my cell phone to any one of them, and they could operate it just as well as I could. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and like I said, for a wonderful purpose, right? Probably much, much more than I'll ever make. Good for them. But that is one of those things where it's hard for them to take it seriously at times, I believe, and see the danger in it, because it's such a norm for them, absolutely. And they may believe, like on Snapchat, where those images are supposed to self-delete after they're viewed for a certain period of seconds, you're still able to take screenshots on another phone. You're still able to use a third device, use a cell phone to take a picture of the screen when that picture's open. Like, there are ways around that, and that's just why I would suggest, and just from a dad's point of view, the best defense is at home for anything related to that, where we need to make sure that the kids are learning the dangers of that from their parents, and they're learning how that can affect them from their parents, first and foremost.
That was the whole purpose of tonight, was to increase our parenting.
No, absolutely. It's a wonderful. That's a wonderful thing. That's something that we need more of, I believe. Anybody else?
Well, we appreciate you. And
Absolutely.
we may call again.
Okay.
As the word gets around,
No, sounds good. We can. I'll come back.
get other.
You guys are nice enough. You weren't too mean.
And we have walking tacos in the back if you'd like to have a snack.
Oh, I appreciate the thought. Thank you, though.
Okay. And if the kids are still playing outside, they probably enjoy a hi from you.
Yeah. You want to show them?
Okay,
Go out there.
let's go out.
I think a lot
So
of.
there was a few of them out in front, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many were left. There's only a handful, I believe, when I walked in. If they're in the front of the church.
Yeah.
They don't.
Good job.
Thank you.